Welcome to Higher Caliber.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Higher Caliber. Today I'm here with Tim Center.
Thanks for having me on.
And we're back with Jeff. If you haven't listened to our episode, what was it, about last year or so?
Yeah, about a year.
We had Jeff on. It was audio only. If you haven't listened to that, go ahead and give it a listen. It was a good episode.
If you got some time.
Yeah. The last time we caught up with you, I believe you just had one leg amputated and you were telling your story, and now you have both of them.
Yes.
So what's been going on since then, buddy?
Well, that pretty much.
Yeah.
But, I think it's fair to say I talked a long time that last time, but I probably blame you for getting me a little hammered on scotch beforehand.
It was your scotch, so.
I'm still a lightweight, no matter whose scotch it is, I guess. But, just been coming back incrementally. I guess that's kind of the theme of, what I was going to try to talk about today is just mentally coming back from, something that takes you out of your normal thing, which could be viewed as either a curse, obviously, or you could easily be viewed as that, or, it's all what you do with it mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I tell you all the time, I think most people will just want to give up and die. It seems like.
Yeah, well,
maybe I'm talking about myself. I don't know, but
there's always a worser case. And I think that's a good
mindset to have.
Yeah. And that's embedded in what I got injured doing, which is like, extreme sports. And I did FMX, specifically. So, jumping dirt bikes, and you don't start out wrecking your body completely. It's like you start out when you're a kid, breaking your collarbone. Everybody, that's the first thing people break.
Yeah.
And you feel bad about it. And even as a young kid, I just would say, well, people, so-and-so broke their femur last year. It could be worse. So
right.
I think that's what you do psychologically, to make it's self-preservation,
Yeah.
And I think it's true. Very rarely does anyone have the worst case scenario of anything. So, at least that's what where I started at, I guess. I think when you have an experience, there's obviously pluses and negatives from it. And I think, going all the way back, I can see where obviously I got messed up racing motocross and doing these things, but you get a mental strength out of it. You can, the same thing, you can either beat yourself up or, we've all seen Uncle Rico and Napoleon Dynamite, right? Like
throw a football over the mountains.
That guy could have been something, I guess,
Right. Well, for the people that don't know, you wanted to get your leg amputated. Not wanted, but that was where it was going. And it wasn't just, I think a lot of people
that's where it was going for well over a decade.
Yeah.
Actually. So, everything happened in 2000, 2001. I broke both legs consecutively. But, prior to that, I had like ruptured my spleen and done a bunch of stuff that there were points where I probably should have quit. But people that do that, they don't have that mentality. You're going to do it until some people would still be riding and racing,
Right.
There are amputees that do that. But I guess, for me, the whole thing just kind of came out as, what am I going to do with that? Like I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but I guess with the legs, like it wasn't a purposeful thing. I didn't want to get it done.
Yeah. I shouldn't say like you woke up one day and you wanted to get it done, but it was heading that direction.
It was actually a hell of a process, and I so just to go back, I had a non-union is what is commonly referred to as like, your bone's not growing back together. And so they did osteotomies and straightened it, and I lost length a couple times, and they lengthened it. So that's a pretty severe process. But even before they lengthened it, my one leg, I definitely wanted an amputation. I went there and said, "Hey, I'm ready. I'm done with this thing." And so they talked me into that. That lasted 5 years. Get talked into something else, and then eventually I got with the right person or the right people, and I think, kind of doing it backwards. Okay, I want to get, or not. I want to. I guess I need to. Like the actual physical thing that was going on is I had severe bone spurs in one ankle from breaking my talus, and then my other one, it was just it looks like a bomb went off in there. And so it's funny, you get hooked up with different people, and so I'm seeking this. I start doing it backwards. I go to the prosthetist basically first. Awesome guy, got me headed in the right direction, got me set up with this surgeon that's like the Michael Jordan of below the knee amputation. So he created a technique. I actually thought it was an abbreviation forever. It's called the Erdl technique, where they join your bones together. And
it's just his last name, huh?
Yeah. He's a Slavic guy or whatever. Anyway, you go there, and it was in Indianapolis. So I tried to hook up with this guy, and unfortunately his wife had just passed away right before that. And, he was just in a different place. And so I kind of got, pushed to the back burner for like a year and a half, and they didn't really take an x-ray. And so when I finally got hooked up with somebody in Columbus that, they're not the MJ of it, but they're going to do a good job. This guy finally does an x-ray, and he's like, "Dude, you've been, walking around on a broken leg for how long?" So he just laughed when he came in, and I looked at him and laughed, and it's, what else are you going to do at that point? So,
you're like, I know what's wrong.
Well, and that's not like a badge of honor that you would carry around with you. It sucked, but, I think that kind of stuff makes you stronger if you're, conscious of it and not treating it the wrong way. So, yeah, that kind of led me to where I'm at. And I think that time period, it was kind of crazy because like, you're just doing what you can and going to work and that sort of thing. But at the same time, you're waiting for something to happen. And the worst part for me, was telling people all the time.
Right.
"Oh, I'm getting this," because I tattoo. So I have clients, and they care about what you're doing, and you're stuck with them. So you're talking about it. Just the process of talking about it over and over again and having that shift around and take years. It just got me really to a point of like, okay, I'm just going to power through this by myself. I don't need, it's actually kind of screwing with me a little bit, I'd say,
Yeah.
So that's where the nickname, I guess, the Uncle Psycho thing came from. So,
so that's a fairly recent nickname.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, I lost my front teeth. And so I looked crazy. I felt crazy. These people kind of treated me like...
Were you wearing that hoodie when you came in?
No.
Oh.
I don't even have a hoodie of it, but, we were making T-shirts, and I just... You ever do something where you have to promote yourself and it's like you don't feel qualified to promote yourself? Or
right.
Like,
sure. You get imposter syndrome a little bit.
Or one time I was supposed to go speak in a class about being a successful photographer. And like at the time, I was so not successful at doing it.
Yeah.
Like making $6,000 a year doing it. And I'm supposed to come in and tell these kids like what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt the same way about, we were making T-shirts for ourselves at the shop. And it's like, I'm just going to make fun of myself. And like, yeah. That's not maybe the best mentally thing to do with yourself, but
right.
It was all in the teeth, like they give you these things. I lost my 2 front teeth. So they give you these things that like, I talk with a lisp. There's like air moving through the top of your front teeth. I could whistle through them, and almost instantly I'm like, I'm not wearing this shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. I look ridiculous, like 2 chiclets, and they still kind of look like chiclets, And so I just kind of made fun of it, but it was a good experience because like, I don't think we should seek other people's approval in any way.
Right.
And like, I mean, I'm nervous sitting here right now talking.
Yeah.
I know this isn't going out to a huge amount of people, or it's not. I can't imagine being a celebrity. Like, could you guys even imagine? Like,
just the feeling of showboating. It's not very, I mean, it's not a humbling thing.
Well, me stupidly choosing every career is showboating.
Right.
Freestyle motocross. What are you doing? You're showboating.
Mm-hmm.
As an artist, what do? You create a little marketing scheme for yourself. You put yourself out there. I am so pissed poor
everything
doing
you
that.
chose.
Yeah, I suck at it.
Yeah.
And like, I guess it's not surprising that I suck at, but honestly, putting myself out there. But honestly,
that's anything where you're not making widgets at the widget factory. You have to self-promote no matter what you do.
It's true. And like, they don't really teach that so much, where it's like networking is such an important thing, but it really is. Like, when I went to graduate school, I loved the camp, and I liked that my whole thing out there was like experiencing place and, going out into different spaces and photographing them. So like, I could have gotten way further ahead if I would have went to all the art openings and done the hobnobbing that I needed to. And like, I'm just incapable of it. And that, that's a whole different subject. But it speaks to how I've handled things, I guess. Like, I just handle them internally. I think the Uncle Psycho thing, it speaks to how close I was to like losing my shit. But at the same time, like, okay, psychotherapy, what are you going to do? Figure it out kind of thing. And
right.
I think we just got to getting to know each other when that was going on. Mm-hmm. Like, you're losing it, dude. But, you always come back around. And I think it's true that you got to kind of lose something to be able to gain something. So, that's the biggest thing is like, I seem to have like life gets interrupted pretty hardcore every 10 years, which could be also a negative thing, but it's such a great thing in a way. Like being able to it's like a painting. Like if you're a painter, you're doing this real close all the time. And then what do you have to do? You have to like step back. Yeah. We don't do that enough with our lives. And I've made turns, and not to say that they've always been the best turns, but I think being able to just like be like, okay, I'm doing something else now is empowering, So, did you have a question?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, just different experiences, forming someone's background. I think it's interesting that I'm friends with you guys because I have such a different background, I feel like a lot of what I'm probably going to talk about is, more, whatever you want to call it, feminine, I guess, viewed as like, being a little bit more of a feminine way of thinking things. And I know that's like not a popular, I shouldn't say popular, but amongst your viewers, that's like a less.
Well, isn't that how hair metal got so successful?
Well, that's like a different thing. Like the idea of fear, like that's, especially in your community, fear is like, you're supposed to be fearless. And, like there is something to being fearless, but
we know the people who say they're fearless are also full of shit.
Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah. And it's embedded in everything. You go to,
it's a mask that you wear.
You go to cook dinner and it's a little bit intimidating. Am I going to fuck this up? Am I going to burn these steaks?
Right.
Like, I'm not saying that rules over you, but like, it's part of laziness. It's part of procrastination. It's part of not doing the shit that you need to do, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I read this book and like, I think art leads you towards all of these self-exploratory things, and, why can't I create something? Fear. Most times you have an unconscious fear. And I think that, that's programmed into what we view, what we read, how we live our lives, just our culture in a way. It's not really fear, I guess. Lack. Like I lack something.
When you did art and when you used to do like college level stuff and you put stuff out, so people just looked at it and just said whatever they're going to say, and you weren't really there unless it was a specific critique. But when it's social media, you most likely will read the comments, and that's something you really don't want to deal with.
Yes.
Not because you think they're all going to be negative.
Well, and you have to kind of get a thick skin, they say,
right?
And, it's all critique,
right?
I think that's the one thing that art school does prepare you for is how to argue and how to like come at something from a point of view and think about all the other points of view that could be coming in. I
think it's also the fast pace of the internet where we just put up butthole pictures every 10 minutes. And the things that you were used to putting out is I've actually thought about this a few times. So whatever you put out, people are just like, gay, move on. You're just like, what the hell?
That exists.
But it's just a never ending, just short attention span loop where it's like,
I think it's just
10
people.
minutes ago.
That's just people, like,
right.
I was just seeing this graphic that, I don't know, you guys know who David Goggins is, right?
Who's going to carry the boats, dude?
I don't know that expression.
So you don't know David Goggins?
My bad.
No, people make fun of him quite a bit. I don't know about make fun of him, but he's the guy who always says who's going to carry the logs and who's going to carry the boats, like on the shoulder from Navy SEAL or from Bud's training. So now there's people just running around with logs like, who's going to carry the fucking logs?
Well, and like he's so extreme that I think he invites that kind of like criticism in a way, but like that was basically the graphic he put up. I don't know how he figured that out. I'm sure you know more than I do as far as like he had someone analyze what's coming in comment wise, and it was overwhelmingly in the negative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why how you could hate on that guy. Like, I'm not doing shit compared to him.
Right.
And like the guy was out fighting fires and then he decided to run an ultra marathon at the end. Like he's a maniac. And so
right.
like, could you say I'm sure he would say he's got plenty of psychological issues, but he's like found his own way to deal with it. And I think that's the interesting part about him is like, he's like a complete quit being a pussy, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and let's go kind of guy. And, I think that's valuable.
And that, I feel like that kind of thing is the most popular these days. Like people love or hate like Andrew Tate, but that's why he got so big. Because the masculine just get out there and fucking do something and don't be a pussy really just emerged again,
Did he ever really describe what he's doing though?
Who?
Tate.
Dude, he puts out videos every 5 seconds.
It just seems like partying and, snorting coke off of a prostitute's tit is like
I don't think so much anymore, but I'm not going to be an Andrew Tate apologist. So I don't. But
no,
I'm just saying
I'm not breaking him down that way. But I just think, I guess that's the thing is like, I don't know what social media is doing other than just continuing to drag our emotions through the mud, and I'm just as guilty of it. I follow FMX riders and I'm still like looking at it and like going back to that time. And I think, have you ever thought about what an algorithm is really? Like, it's so weird to think about, but it's like a history mirror. If you think about it, like you do something, it tracks that and then it shoves it back in your face. And so how's that good? That's the definition of not getting over something. So, right. Heaven forbid someone looks up how to get some help online, like then they're, marked with whatever. This person's depressed. I'm going to keep it. Like, it seems like it's meant to keep you in the state that you're in. And, or less than that.
Mm-hmm. And
I do it. I had to quit doing it with even just shooting pictures. That's not to do with anybody else, but even just shooting a picture of a tattoo, nothing good's going to come out of that, really. And I know
why is that?
The self-critique,
mm-hmm.
the self-critique part of it, and it never is good as it's like a sculptural thing. It's on a body which isn't flat. You take this flattening thing and you put it up there, and the lighting can never be good enough, and it.
You don't think
I'm just never satisfied.
You don't think the risk is worth the reward of putting your own work out there?
Oh boy. That goes back to my own, how I feel about social media, I guess. Like, and that goes back, I guess, to like if you go to if you're an artist and you're making something, like they wanted me so badly to do artwork about being a dirt bike guy and doing this, and like I'm not saying that they were even there wasn't any negative intention to that. They just wanted to know about my lived experience, but I'm not doing that. Like I can't sum it up, and I feel that way about practically everything now, but like there's no way that I can take somebody back through all those experiences and just the, I look at how like you don't hear about that sport anymore. Like back in the Mountain Dew Extreme Gravity Games,
cheese Doritos,
the Gravity Games days, like you heard about it then, and those guys might have been. And I'm not trying to level their achievements at all. It's like it's just so undervalued, just like anything else. Anything that if you're a badass at doing something, like people don't understand it. People, and that goes back to even empathy. For someone to, I don't know what it was like to go to combat. I don't know what it was like to serve in a unit and have a friend pass away. I don't know what any of that shit's like. So I try not to speak to it that way. And I think that's part of the sad part for those people is they can't really get anybody, just like what you're asking with art. It's not a social media thing. They've done studies on how much time people spend with artworks in museums and how much time they spend reading the artist statement. And like, no one gives a shit. And like, I can't say no one because there's a community of people who really care about it. But like,
generally speaking,
most people aren't going to give it much time. And I look at our attention spans now, like we're just going through stuff. And I don't think that's really fair to our brains or other people,
right?
Especially if you're being, kind of a dick about it. So I just feel like I don't want to be a part of playing myself out like that, I guess. Because that's part of the process you go through before you get amputations where they make you meet people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They make you meet other amputees?
Well, at least my people did. I don't know if that's standard procedure, but yeah, they had me do a small survey, and it was kind of terrifying.
Is that for the decision-making process?
Yeah, which was kind of frustrating because I don't feel like they never did an x-ray, like take an x-ray and like, I need it.
Right.
But at the same time, you got to like, okay, you've got all these stories coming in, and the one guy was just like destroyed by his amputation. And he said he gets up every night and he looks at his leg and he's crying about it. And you have to know when to discard that person's experience and say, I'm not going to be that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the formula for me is controlling negative viewpoints of yourself, I guess.
Yeah. It's obviously extremely important. Like I said earlier, you didn't just crawl up in a ball and do nothing,
Well, and it's kind of going back to what it would be like compared to someone else. It's such an individual, like I have such an encapsulated experience. Like I chose to do this. I got messed up. It's been my choices all along the way. I guess if I run the wrong way with it, I could, blame the promoter or blame my dad or, like I would never, like I was an adult when I did those things. So, I think owning it is part of it, but like, how do you own it in some of these more complex situations based on what we were talking about? Like, I don't know exactly what to recommend to someone who is suffering from PTSD, but at the same time, I kind of think that there are things that you can start to do mentally that might lead you out of that. And, and it's such an incremental thing, it's not going to happen overnight.
What's been the biggest thing for you mentally? Like what routine have you made yourself get in?
I could meditate more. And I know that sounds like, once again, kind of frou-frou or whatever.
Well,
but
the way I understand it, when I used to hear meditation, I would think of the weirdest, craziest Buddha monk thing ever. But now the way I understand it, there's a dozen different ways to meditate for different people. And
Yeah. And everybody kind of blames, and myself included, I used to just say, well, I can't make my brain sit still like that.
Yeah.
Find a space of nothingness. And I know that is the goal a lot of times, but the things that I think about are always like just thinking about your life and not in a retrospective, I could have done this, or let me go back to that experience, more projecting what you want out of the future. And I've been reading this book by this guy, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he talks a lot about not just envisioning a future, but kind of actually feeling it. And that sounds, weird, but there's a lot of brain science that goes behind what he's saying. He's not just like some mystical person or, new age philosopher. He's an actual brain scientist. So there's all these crazy studies that they've done with just brain power. And we know about placebos, and we've heard about those where it's like very compelling to see however many, way above 50% of people in a placebo study have good results. Mm-hmm. How's that possible? Well, they've done studies in people where they meditate on working out and not just like
was that the
out.
Cleveland Clinic study you were telling me about?
Yeah. And, people grew muscle mass. They did one with pianos where they had a group that learned piano and took lessons, and another group that just thought about it during that lesson time. Same results.
That's wild.
And so, this guy's theory, it's not a theory, I guess. He seems to know what he's talking about. Feelings are attached to your entire body, like how you feel about something. And so you can imagine if someone's tortured by a past event, like what that's doing to them. And he has this story in the beginning of the book that's just horrendous. Some lady, her husband commits suicide, and, just a super downhill story where she lost her job, she lost her kid, she lost everything basically. And then she just started thinking about changing her neural pathways is like how this guy approaches it. And he's right. We get into patterns all the time, and they say that like 90% of our thinking is automatic, especially if you're on a schedule every week. Does that mean you have to go out and act erratic to try to break that? No, not really. But he's just saying there's small adjustments that you can make if you don't like things. You can, retrain yourself, and it's going to be uncomfortable. It's like quitting smoking or anything else where it's like you're going to be uncomfortable at first, but you can train your new thoughts to kind of make a roadway.
Does this guy have pretty good recommendations on where to start instead of just sitting down and thinking your way out of?
Well, he thinks, and a lot of people, I'd say not just him, think that it starts with just appreciation and love, and that sounds
mainly for yourself first, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And I think that sounds so cheesy. And I guess I've heard that in the past. And I think people were right when they told me that, hey man, you need to love yourself more. And it's like, what a thing to hear, like,
right.
How can you not respond negatively to that, right. And I think any way you frame it, the human psychology is going to be like, screw you. But I think a better way to frame it for people who are more alpha male types is respect. If you're not respecting yourself or your own thoughts, or, I think I tagged you, or I sent you that thing earlier, and I told you to listen to a certain part of it, because the thing I thought that was interesting about that is they were saying, most of us think that you can have this interior dialogue and none of it matters. As long as it doesn't come out and manifest itself out of your head, it doesn't matter. But he's saying it does. Like, those are reinforced pathways. So if you don't have to say I'm shit, but if you think I'm shit a bunch of times, like, you're gonna, right. Your body has a way of following through with that.
I believe that.
It's really interesting. So, and I think that goes along with, I'm sure a lot of veterans are looking for help and they go to seek therapy, and a lot of therapy goes straight to pharmaceuticals now. Mm-hmm. What if some of the stuff that we're talking about is true? Like, it seems true, but could you imagine like what we're doing to people with more poison, essentially?
Right.
It's going to alter that same chemistry that you're trying to gain control of.
Yeah, we're just damping down those building blocks.
Yeah, and cognitive therapy has boiled down to, at this point, you just go talk to somebody. That's
like step one, not like the rest of your life. You know,
I peer groups. I know there are a lot of peer groups out there for veterans, and but what, to me, I don't want to go and talk to a bunch of other amputees about their experience. Like, that's cool that I have a community, but at the same time, it's like posting about it online. Every time someone comments, "Oh man, you're so brave," even like if they do that, I'm still going back to that and reliving that. Yeah. Whatever. Mm-hmm. It's keeping me. I don't want to think about myself. I want to be surprised when I look in the mirror and see my legs. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
And that's not avoidance. That's like, okay, I still have to deal with it, but it's not going to dominate
That's not who you are.
No.
Just like we've talked about, your job isn't who you are. Your amputation is not who you are.
Well, think about all the things that define us in that way. It's difficult to break out of any of that. Especially, I'm not a parent either, so I speculate on what it's like to be a parent, but I would think a lot of these issues become a lot more serious when you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure you guys feel that. It's easy for me to joke around about doomsday, but not when you have kids.
Right.
So
yeah, then you got to worry about feeding their asses.
Right.
Once they get to shooting age, it becomes a little easier, I'm sure.
Yeah. So,
do you think
I completely avoided this? But
avoided what?
My notes for myself. I'm completely off track now. So
I'll give you a minute.
No, I'm fine. Yeah. I guess what he talks about most is just elevating your state of consciousness. And that seems so, okay, I'll go elevate my state of consciousness.
I'll do it tomorrow.
Like, if you break down all that stuff and what it's actually saying to do, it's what you need to do. Just like the loving yourself thing. It's like, I already do. I cook myself a pound of bacon every once in a while and eat it.
Self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for me, I just want to get past the conditioning, past I haven't made a post about anything. Like, I have clients, I feel like I just left them hanging. But for me, I just literally can't think of a way to come and just present that to people.
Right. What's more upsetting for you? The fact that you haven't made a post, or the fact that you're mad that you haven't, or you're even thinking about the fact you haven't made a post? Like, the fact that it's bothering you. Because I think the latter
I feel like I'm at a school dance and I'm expected to go out in that circle, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do right now.
And then when you finally go out there, you realize people are just doing this back and forth.
Well, and like, that would have freaked me out as a kid, and I definitely was not the one in the center of the circle dancing, and I had friends that did, but I realized eventually that, the more stupid you look out there, the better.
Right.
For sure.
The whole social media thing, I'm constantly on it, so I'm not going to preach to anybody. But when I hear things like, well, there was a bomb threat, I didn't hear about that at all. Well, it was on Facebook. I don't have Facebook. And the people are like, well, it was on Facebook. It's like, that's not the real world. You're expecting people like just to be, what is it called when we're all just, we are Facebook or the internet.
Well,
like, we're all neural linked in.
Yeah.
And it's like,
there's plurality of truth.
Yeah. If it wasn't on Facebook, it didn't happen. And as much as I use it, it pisses me off, like, to no end. Like, I
think you busted me on a few things where I've tagged you in something and I'm like, man, isn't this screwed up? And you're like, is that real? And I'm like, I don't know.
It's on Facebook.
Right. So once you plug yourself in, you have to realize that it's a game, like.
Well, and there's literally no other way to do it now. I can't, like, you'd have to just remove yourself and be a hermit, which I'm pretty close to, but
And some of the best time I have is just, as weird as it sounds, is like putting my phone down and just hanging out with my buds and
drinking garage beers
and then stuff. You feel like you're doing something completely, not that you shouldn't be doing, but it's almost like a whole different. I think that you just feel better because that's what we're supposed to be doing is talking to each other and not like.
Well, your actual brain chemistry is changing in those situations, and that's a lot what they're talking about with.
I've meditation. Sent you both 4 reels and you didn't even notice just sitting here.
Just
you probably did.
All right.
Well, Jeff, you said that you were really close to a hermit, and I don't know you as well as Jared does, but I know your situation. But the other day when and you came to help build the Beat Laboratory, and you rolled up on a fucking motorcycle, and I was like, it's the same guy that just gave me a tattoo. I know he doesn't have legs.
Well, I mean, you find a way to do stuff, and like
and he rode up on a motorcycle like that. Like to me, I was like, this fucking dude's got it figured out.
That's just it, though. No, I don't. First of all, but I guess it's
very humble of you, but you still rolled up on a motorcycle.
You rode up on a motorcycle.
There's no way.
Because in our line of work, we see amputees. We see people with legs that don't fucking walk.
Yeah, but there's a lot
all the time. Cases. All the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for somebody that doesn't have legs, like,
he's got legs.
I mean, you do.
I'm not gonna go and like get back into racing or anything.
I'm not saying
I just have to like. You got to push yourself.
Exactly, and I think you are.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I have my own weaknesses. You know, social media being one. I was talking about that, but I'm real good at kicking. I called it like kicking a 2x4. Like when you get new legs, even now, after I've shrunk down and everything, I'm still on temporary legs, so I'm still not all the way through it. At first, it's like kicking a 2x4, like Bruce Lee style. I'm going to toughen up, you know, and my knees actually are a pretty good example of that, where I couldn't kneel for about 10 years because I had hardware all up in my legs. Mm-hmm. And so once that came out, I'm like, I'm crawling everywhere. Like if my legs are off and I have to use the restroom, I'm crawling in there, you know, and like it kind of works itself out perfectly actually, because like kneeling next to my tiny toilet, like I don't need to get into it, but you know, it's perfect height, I guess.
Yeah.
But my knees were such little bitch knees at first. Like I couldn't even crawl on a carpeted floor, you know? And so am I going to give up? No, I'm going to keep, like, you're forced to do it. And so there are those little times in life. Everybody gets that occasionally. Oh, I got to go dig a hole outside. I don't want to, but you go and do it. And like, what do you feel afterwards? A small little sense of achievement, or, you know, you're digging yourself out of like, man, I don't do shit. That part of you that's in the back of your head where you're like, and everybody feels that way. I think, I don't know. I have my own situation, and like people look at it, and especially like when you redo your own house, like I'm sure people looked at my house from the road at certain points and like, what in the hell is this guy doing? It has taken forever. Where's the siding at? You know, and like, eventually you get it and people start rooting for you. And so I think other people get that. It's way too easy to impress other people because like I grew up racing bikes, you know, and like I can't not ride a bike a little bit. So like what I see is just like kind of pedestrian. You guys kind of seeing it in a different way. And whether or not that's warranted or not, I guess being humble about it and always striving for more is kind of the answer. Like if I were to be like, oh yeah, rode over here that day, like, you know, it's nothing. Right. It's nothing.
You're not racing again, but the fact that you're like, you know, this is who I am, so I'm going to do what I always do. I don't.
Yeah.
But legs be damned, I'm doing it.
That's the cool part, I guess, about where I'm at now is I'm kind of just on the bridge of getting back to like, maybe I might try to snowboard next year. I don't know. People snowboard with, you know, prosthetics, and it's just hard to, you got to pace yourself, you know, and I thought about maybe even trying that this year. There's always time, I guess.
Yeah.
But, you know, for like what I'm trying to do, I guess, is just manage expectations too. You know, you have everybody else. That's part of how social media gets you all messed up, is other people's expectations. The idea of like,
that's exactly what it is.
Coming back, like, oh, dude, you're back. No, it's such a gray area in between. Oh, I'm laying in bed and I'm back fully. Like,
yeah,
you know, I should probably be back to tattooing full time, but I just cannot stand to sit around on these things. Like for some reason, you know, the back of them rubs a little bit. And so that killed me for a while to not be able to come back full time. But I've grown more used to the idea that I just got to do things at a little different pace.
You don't need to walk in through the doors again and have people just fucking give you a round of applause. Like,
it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, like I find it hard to, I don't know how that many, how do people have that many people that would care about them in that way? Like, is that like a sad statement about our society, or is that just the way life is? You know,
I would just have to pre-text him and say, hey, I'm walking through the door. I need you to give me a little,
start the golf clap, start the slow clap. Always wanted to start one of those.
That popular? I don't know.
Not us.
It kind of, that must be weird.
Yeah.
Maybe all those are staged events.
Could be.
Any party over 10 people is a staged event. Oh, wait. That's a different show, I guess.
The fact that, I don't know if we talked about it on mic or we just talked about it in general. The fact that people didn't see you active on social media and were like, what the hell? Like,
yeah, that's what happens.
He's down.
You're crazy.
He's not living like the rest of us.
Losing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess I didn't help that with the whole Uncle Psycho thing going into it. But, you know, I guess I could probably do more of that, but that's, right. I don't want to. And I think it's, you know, I still participate in it, but it's something I'm trying to phase out. I have plenty of other things that, you know, I think it's important to have dreams and, you know, whatever that is, like, my dreams are my dreams. They're not that lofty anymore. I just want to have like a homestead basically. But, at the same time, there's stuff in there that I consider to be like innovative, I guess, you know? And so I think for me, even when I was like in bed or couldn't walk or waiting on legs or whatever, you could take that time as like, I'm going to play a bunch of video games or watch a bunch of TV or surf the internet or like kind of make a plan and retool yourself for whatever is coming next. And none of us know what's coming next. I mean, that's a whole other subject entirely. But, you know, for me, I just want to keep things positive, keep growing what I have to grow. So,
like literally, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, my thing
like
is food security, I guess. Yeah. You know,
and I think people that actually utilize those programs where they have vets and who else do homesteading and working on ranches stuff, that's where it's at. At least that's where I see it actually work. I mean, for you, if you wouldn't have stuff to actually do, don't you think for most people that's where the depression actually sets in?
Yeah,
when they're stagnant.
Yeah, and I mean, you have no
tomorrow outlet. Doesn't really matter. It's just another day.
It's easy to see that world when you're like living it and you're stuck in an apartment. And I feel very blessed to have the space that I do. But I guess part of what I want to figure out is how to share that with people or how to get people interested in that, because there is something to taking care of other stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, I frame that kind of loosely because it could be anything.
It could be anything.
You hate to tell somebody to go get a pet or a plant and then they, you know, kill the plant or not taking care of the animal. But I do think that helps when you have no way to love yourself. So like learning how to love something else is kind of, you know, and that happens with people and kids all the time. Like they're not very respectful of themselves and then they have a kid and, you know, they either become worse sometimes, I guess, but
sometimes a lot of people turn it around.
It fixes their life a lot of times. Yeah. So,
do you think people were depressed back in the day when I don't know, pick a time, 100 years ago?
The Great Depression.
I was going to say that.
It's almost like we had to evolve to the point
do you think we evolved into depression? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that comes from all sorts of places.
But I mean, now, like, when people are too worried about whether they're going to get a meal the next day, they might be anxious, but they're not depressed. But when people can't lose weight in the society we're living in now, it's the hardest thing. And they're depressed about that, isn't that?
Well, my grandma used to talk about what she got for Christmas, you know, and she was born in 1913, lived to be 100. And we got oranges. She would always tell us about the oranges she would get at Christmas. And like, that seems like so archaic at this point. Like they got fruit, but that just speaks to like how you just didn't get everything all year around. Like you didn't get avocados on demand and all the stuff that we, you know, I think that's part of like, you know, the mentality we were talking about where there's always a worst case scenario. Well, think about some of those worst case scenarios. I think about not just veterans and war situations and all the sacrifice that was made in that sense, but even just agricultural or if you ever seen pictures of like Pittsburgh in the Industrial Revolution, like it was straight smog pretty much. And so people live through all these conditions to kind of get us to a point where we have such an easy life now. And like, that's what kind of frustrates me about the idea that life is boring. Well, life is boring because other people pay the price to make it easy. And so to me, I think I owe it to all of those people. And I think in a more direct way, people tend to think about it from their own family's perspective. Grandpa passes away. Oh, he had these dreams of doing something. Well, I want to live that for them, which is a weird concept because like they're not here.
Yeah.
But I find myself doing stuff for people who are never here. And that seems like such a weird concept. But like, I think that's part of what you're saying, where you evolve to a point where you're like, oh my God, what are we doing? And then you return back to some of these less technological solutions.
Exactly.
And that's not even mentioning all the technology that's been suppressed, but that's getting back into the conspiracy end of things, which I won't.
It's the very top of the rabbit hole.
You keep me. You keep the screen over the rabbit hole for me.
Yeah.
The screen doors.
I know it's coming because I can feel myself being pulled into it. Like fluoride filter. Anyway.
I don't like being labeled as such.
No, I don't either.
Don't you dare discredit me.
Tim's a conspiracy theorist.
Well, without going into it, I mean, how much of that is true now? Come on now.
All of it.
So, you know, the other thing that I wanted to mention is like kind of how all this kind of comes back to stuff they're finding in science, which I'm not a scientist. I'm not, you know, and anything that I talk about, I just want to preface with that I'm not an expert, but I'm here to share my experience.
You don't have a monopoly on the science. There's only one group of people that have that, and it's not you.
Screen door on the rabbit hole, bud. Just ran right into it.
Flirting with it.
Yep.
Sorry.
But, you know, a lot of stuff that they discover are discovering with quantum physics. And it's just so crazy to think that nothing really, you're not there really. Like if you go down on the subatomic level, there's nothing there. There's electrons, just a vacuum. And so if things are bouncing around, like there's so much to look at, but I think some of that stuff is going to come to present itself. And like, I just think that so many people are going to have to keep an open mind about the future coming up. If not, you're going to get deceived because there's just like they play off of that.
Right.
That's what all the duality is online. Like, you know, you can't, my phone knows it's me. So it tells me all the stuff that I want to hear. It's like self-reifying.
Yeah, I have 4 Instagram accounts, and I can tell I'm on the one I don't want to be on when it shows me like all photography.
Yep.
And then I'm like, no, I want to look at, oh, I forgot to go to my main account. Oh, there's Alex Jones. Cool. You know what I mean?
Well,
but it just knows based off what you like and what you've watched the longest and what you've shared the most.
How do you think Alex Jones feels about that?
I don't know.
Doesn't he feel like he's in an echo chamber at that point? Like, everybody that he speaks to is either making fun of him,
right,
or believing the fuck out of him.
Yeah, it keeps him relevant. So
I just think it's a really crappy way that we've figured out how to break stuff down, or the way it breaks down.
Oh, we just put labels on people all the time.
Yeah, and I felt that when you have a show, you have some art up, especially if you're like a social justice person and you're trying to convince people of something with your artwork, and you put it up and you got it hanging there. People are going to believe it. But the question, I guess, is what did they think of that subject before they came in? They probably already thought the same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's like we have these little groups and we're not really expanding outside of those groups. And like I said, I was nervous to come on here today because I feel like a lot of your viewers are definitely not going to just jump on the idea of loving themselves or any of these foo-foo things that I'm kind of talking about. But they do have value. And if you take away the ego part, it's just, considering yourself important.
Right.
It's like, that's the first thing. I'm worthy of doing this, living, really. I think a lot of people are struggling with that.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I thought of that I'm also guilty of too is, people are like, oh, my kids come first, but then they put absolutely no maintenance into themselves. So how much of that are you pouring on over to your kids? Because I'm guilty of that myself.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I think about a lot anyway.
Talk is cheap nowadays, I guess.
Right.
And we should be our own worst critics in that sense, where you call yourself on the bullshit. But I think we have a lot of things, social media, to mask that. You can look at that and it's a shame that doesn't manifest itself in anything else other than just views or whatnot. I feel like it's funny how this author I'm talking about, this Dispenza guy, he talks about making a mind map, or it's basically a mind map. It's like something that you can, I think it's a movie actually, a mind movie. And there's a app that you can plug stuff in, and it's like, what the hell you want to happen in the future? So it's funny how that scientifically is kind of working for people, because he's shown results where that's manifested itself after people focus on that.
Right.
But then you have your phone where it's like, I can focus on having an Instagram account, but what's it really going to do other than grow my Instagram?
Right.
There's no net result.
Well, it's a catch-22 because you probably found this guy online.
Yes. And I'm online right now.
Right. So somebody might hear this and look him up and then turn their phone off and do what he says.
And I'm a classic hater. So I ask any of my students from back in the day, they will say Jeff is a hater because I will rip the shit out of it. I'll rip something apart, and someone could do that with me. What's Jared even gotten this guy on here? He screwed up his legs, made a mistake, went to art school, mistake, tattoo artist, that industry is kind of getting blown apart, mistake. Now he's going to go into homesteading. What the hell? You can go out and buy eggs. What the hell is this guy doing? So you can choose to rip me down, but that's the great part about being self-contained or comfortable with your own vision of the future, is you don't need that approval. And I used to be like that. Before I would do in a project, I would think, well, I lack this and this and this physically, but then I also lack these people's approval, and I have to explain it to them before, my mom or somebody. Right. I really want you to know what I'm doing. She doesn't care. She's my mom. She cares, but no one really cares about what you're doing other than you. And
is that just age? Was there one event that turned it off for you, or is it just maturing?
Gets beat out of you. Life operates in such a backwards way. How great would it be if we went into life with more time and more knowledge, but we have more time and less knowledge. So you gain knowledge and dreams and all of these perspectives. And then it just seems like time is so damn short lately.
Right.
And so that's a battle. But I think teaching people to not care would be a really cool thing for people to learn, and I don't know how to get people to not care, because everybody gives a shit, especially in the day of
this old, E5 that I was in the army with used to say, what do you say? I care, but I don't give a fuck. Mm-hmm. And the first time you hear that, it makes absolutely no sense, but you start to understand a little bit more what that means.
Well, I had that in here as like a point that I wanted to bring up where it's like, is patriotism a form of self-love, you know? And like, is that mentality a form of like, okay, I care, but I don't care about your perspective because I've done my own research and I'm confident in what I'm doing.
Right.
I don't know where it's hard to even gauge where people lie in that now because everybody is like,
loving your country is pretty, well, any place but America is not mainstream. If you love it, it's not mainstream anymore. You're a white nationalist, even if you're not white.
I could say so much about that just coming from the background I did, because in art institutions, I don't think anybody's going to listen to that from that world, but you know, screw them if they do. Like
welcome. Subscribe.
That world is biased towards kind of hating yourself. Maybe it was the school I went to, but like, you know, here I am just I talked about it on the last show. Like, I'm just like out of place when I go out there, and I'm living in Albuquerque where it's like in your face very blatantly that we just shit all over their land, basically, you know? And like, you can't be a patriot and not address that and somehow handle that in your head where, you know, how can I just be blindly patriotic and not address the fact that we've made mistakes? It's the same thing as psychotherapy. Like, we've made tons of mistakes and we continue to make mistakes. And some people even say that our governmental agencies are captured, you know, and like that could be true, but I'm still pulling for the home team.
Right. At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could talk about any of the talking points and you can see the separation of people who think that America is shit and people who think that America is
the shit.
It's more nuanced than that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like no country is the shit, probably. We could probably disprove that for any country.
I mean, we're the best.
Yeah. I mean, at many things.
Yeah. If we're all racing towards the bottom, we're still the best.
It just doesn't matter at this point, I don't think. You know?
Right.
And you could argue about what states are the best. And
it matters for the little kids in like Cuba and Venezuela and socialism that are fighting over $1 that have nothing to eat. We're just like, I'm going to track my calories tomorrow.
Well, and how much of a fighting chance, and I'm not sticking up for socialism in any way, but how much of a chance did those test cases ever, like they don't have much capital to begin with, you know, and like the U.S. is positioned in a way to be a certain way, just like China is positioned in the world to be a certain way. Like it's all, I used to think it was kind of a structuralist philosophy kind of goes into this where it's like everything's got a product, everything comes from something, and there's a history to all that stuff. That's obvious, but how can it not be the thing after all? Like, it's just hard to make a quick turn like that. And I think that's what the U.S. is kind of going through, where what people want isn't in line with what's happening.
Yeah.
So
that's the simplest way to put it.
Yeah. I don't know how you get back.
Well, we're not going to figure it out.
Yeah. I'm scared to figure it out.
You don't want to know.
Even the potential, you know, not violence, not like we're going to go do something, you know, nothing like that. Just like, well, what would happen if we quit supporting whatever? Like we're dependent upon the same things that we should.
You mean we can just stop paying taxes?
Or anything, just stop doing anything, any kind of boycott. Like, okay, we can do that, but not everybody can do that because it's the game of Monopoly has already been played for a while.
Right.
There's only a few players left.
No one's going to do anything because we just watched what happened when, as long as you give them Netflix, what else? Food delivered to their door.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to show your party papers to go grocery shopping. But as long as you give them that, we'll do. Oh, we're getting in the hole again. I just found myself in the hole. I'm going to pull myself back out.
You went through the screen.
Dipped your toe in, buddy.
You smelled the air down there and you're like, oh, it's nice cool air breeze coming out of that hole.
Sorry.
Well, why is it a hole though? Is that because it's hidden? Is it?
No,
you know what I mean? Just think about the whole term rabbit hole. Like, oh, you're going down in a hole to find some information. It's dirty down there. It's, all these things.
Did that term come out before Alice in Wonderland?
I'm sure it's got plenty to do with that, but I'm trying to break down, like, why do they have us feeling like I got to go into the dirt to dig all these things up?
Where would you rather go?
I would prefer them to be just laying out in the middle of the field for me to look at.
Yeah.
Let me get some light on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Shine some freaking light
down there
on
with a headlamp. Like, I don't like it. Like, have you guys ever predicted a crash before it happens? You know what I mean? Like, you're
in a weird way predicted a call.
It doesn't have to be a crash, but like
an event or something.
Yeah. It's almost like your brain isn't thinking about it, but something else in your body tells you, it's your gut. They say it's your gut. And I think the book that you loaned me is really pretty much just about that. And a lot of what we talked about today is pretty much about that, where it's like, you're kind of being a little bit psychic when you can manipulate time and think about something in a intuitive way, and I think that's part of what they're saying is to modify your brain chemistry. So part of the automatic things your body is doing is a good thing rather than a negative thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's happened to me so many times riding bikes. It's horrifying because you know that you're probably going to see the crash before it happens. So you're kind of getting it twice. But the most recent thing is I went outside with my stupid Crocs on and slipped, and I thought about it as I was walking out into the snow. I thought, you have Crocs on, you shouldn't be out here, you're going way too fast. And as soon as you think that, it happens. So is that moment charged by me thinking that's going to happen? I think it does. Like it's almost predictive. And going back to when I was a kid just learning how to ride a bicycle. I'm going to hit something. What happens?
Wham.
Yeah. So
I don't know if you can blame it on the Crocs as much because they are very slippery. But
no, it's my decision to wear the Crocs. But they're easy. They're easy to put on.
Well, I get that.
Right.
They're not doing anybody any favors when it comes to traction, but
or style.
I don't know. It's just you're laying there in a puddle and you're all muddy and shit, and you're just thinking,
I did this to myself.
I knew this was going to happen.
Crocs.
I mean, do you think it's that, or is it like just intuition? Like, bro, why am I out here? I'm in Crocs. Bam.
I don't know. It's a chicken or the egg for sure.
All right.
I feel like it's a chicken, not an egg.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, I get it.
And like, are you guys familiar with the term entropy? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where
entropy.
Like,
I feel like
let's say
we
you build a
house
house and you have a deck, and you don't do much to the deck. What happens to the deck?
Deteriorates.
Yeah. So that's entropy, right? And that's just a life thing. Everything deteriorates if you're not paying attention to it. And so that's embedded within being conscious also, is saying, there's other studies that they've done on the molecular level that are crazy, where it's like water. You can have molecules of water sitting around and give this one love and praise and talk nice to it. And then you got this one in another room and you go in there and you hate the fuck out of it. Screw you, water.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this to me?
The
water?
famous ones with plants, right?
Yeah.
Where they shame plants.
Yep. And they've done it to all sorts of stuff. And careful what you talk smack on.
Right.
What can you get away with that with? Even your phone, like, think about that when AI starts coming around. You can't be mean to your phone anymore. Don't be talking shit on Alexa. She'll come back at you,
Not wrong.
But
self-driving car through your freaking
I think that happens with if I'm going to make a print and I'm dealing with a printer, like I'll come into it with a good attitude because that printer could rise up against me in a way.
Yeah.
Right.
I know that's absurd, but.
Well, do you think it's absurd when pilots and people do that to their aircraft? Like, what's it hurting to talk nice to the plane that you're flying around, right?
Or to just have a good attitude. And I think that's underlying everything is just like what you think of it, what emotions it creates in your body. Like that's such a simple way to look at things, but it's like I have social anxiety. So like I know putting myself in a bar situation is not going to be good for me. Like, can I do it? Yeah. But I have to be conscious of like what that's going to do. Mm-hmm. I there is something to all of this stuff on a subatomic level and even on a generational level. Like they've proven that they had these mice and they traumatized them when they showed them cherry blossoms. And then
cherry blossoms?
I don't know. It's random, but it was just like the trigger, right?
Okay.
So these mice are triggered. They get those mice to have babies. And even generations later, cherry blossom. So isn't that kind of crazy? And like there's this other person that I wanted to mention in here, but I didn't really get a chance to. Rupert Sheldrake. It's this guy who since the 90s, he's been trying to prove some of this stuff scientifically, where it's like a butterfly in this continent will have a adaptation where it will change over time. And then over in this other continent where there's no crossing over of, it's adapting in the same way, or it'll take on the same traits. And it's just interesting to me how.
I mean, we've kind of proven that already with evolution, haven't we? Like,
yeah, but not on a interior mental space level where it's like, well, my grandpa was in World War II.
Oh, you mean that
what soon? If that trauma goes through to you somehow, even if he doesn't talk about it? That could exist very easily.
That's probably why I don't like Korean food.
Could be all the side condiments also. That's confusing. All the pickled stuff.
Right.
It's difficult to choose.
Yeah.
Crazy flavor.
No, I've heard of what you're talking about before. And it may have been from you.
I've never thought about it like that.
Well, it's really interesting.
And that is interesting.
And I think it gives us kind of an out when it comes to like why we feel the way we feel about some things. Like, why am I socially anxious? Well, maybe something happened in, my grandparents' or great grandparents' life, or who even knows. But
that's totally wild, but it makes sense.
Well, we tend to just like go straight to our formative years. Why is this wrong with me? Well, what happened when I was 0 to 7 to form that? I just think there's more to it than we understand. And humans are so bad at being like, this is the way things, like look at universes or Big Bang Theory or any of these. That's why they put theory after it, because they don't freaking know.
Right.
Dress it up however you want, but you don't know. Maybe we'll get to knowing someday, but that's kind of a scary thing also, I guess.
Right.
I don't know if people are prepared for that.
Maybe when they unleash the real science on us.
I think people would definitely like to have one version of the truth, and
there should be one version of the truth. That's why it's called truth, eh?
I don't know if anybody even believes about it anymore.
Oh, we're doing it again.
Yeah. Truth. What is that?
Is there an F on that?
Truth. Yeah. So it's crazy to think about all those things and try to sum them up for yourself. And what are you going to do with it? But what else are you like? I'd rather understand things and try to respond. I guess I feel the same way about conspiracy and some of the things that I know talk about intuition, like trust your intuition with some of that stuff. That's why they say to do your own research, because you're not like going to just read stuff. You're going to experience it emotionally.
Right.
That's going to lead you to a much better place, I think. So I tend to, you hit on it a little bit, but in racing bikes, it's so easy to put yourself in that other brainwave, like they call it alpha, or, we're in a certain frequency most of the time where we're thinking we're in our interior space. But if you're on a bike and the gate drops and you're out there with a bunch of other riders, there is no way in hell you're thinking about anything except for what's going on. And it forces you into this state of like, intuition or whatever you want to call it, flow. A lot of people call it that. And I'm not saying that I'm like great at it, but you can experience that with anything, doing dishes.
Yeah, flow state.
It's just being mindful. And the person that told me about it was a professor who just like got so mad at the class for not doing what they were doing, not doing the assignment. And she just said, you guys are missing out on the point completely. All this stuff is so easy if you just become mindful about it. And like, that's another cheesy sounding thing. But, you know, I was setting fence posts in the cold a few weeks ago. And like, why would everybody, even when I went to Lowe's to buy more posts, they're like, hell of a day to be doing this. You sure you want to be out doing this today? Yeah, I do, because it makes me feel good. And like, it gives me something to pay attention to other than the shit that's dealt out to me all. Like, we're all just being brainwashed by the stuff that we, you know, and that sounds like such a top down thing to say. Your brain. I have a phone too in my pocket, but I don't like it. I want to spike it on the ground sometimes. I always wanted to do that. Have like a, you know, like the ALS challenge, but instead it's like spike your phone in the ground challenge. But I really think people should do the icky shuffle when do you guys remember the icky shuffle? It's the perfect spike your phone on the ground thing.
The icky shuffle?
Yeah,
There's too many shuffles now, dude. I forget.
The icky shuffle was the, maybe the longest one. And the reason that I don't know much about sports, but I do know this. That's why they made the 10-second rule or whatever the celebration rule is. And I think they even outlawed celebrations for a while because, like, you know, he's got this
excessive
whole routine
celebration.
Yeah.
He's got this whole like shuffling the ball back and
Dude,
forth.
you should
and
know.
It's a dance. And then he gives the huge spike at the end.
Tim's been into football for.
I don't know a lot about
the last
sports,
month.
but I've been sports betting. You know, that's
really?
That's a slippery slope. Let me tell you.
I could imagine, because don't they bet on everything? Like
Anything.
what color socks is so and so going to have?
You can
on?
bet on everything.
The only thing I would bet on maybe is this, like where they have like someone who's not even an athlete come in and try and kick a field goal. That seems interesting to me. Like there's no way that you can.
It's crazy.
Hedge your bet.
And I don't want to get down my own rabbit hole, but they're making so much money off of people sitting on their couch, on their phones, just dumping money into this thing. I mean, are sports legitimately real anymore?
Well, didn't you guys just see that thing that came out where the Canadian news accidentally let it slip about who's going to be in the Super Bowl?
I did.
What?
Aren't we all just waiting to see now if it's going to be the Ravens and the 49ers? Like, I could give two shits.
Yeah.
I can't tell you a single Super Bowl winner for the past 20
years. The game
years.
last night didn't matter because the Ravens and the 49ers already won their, you know. So
the next ones are going to tell the tale of whether or not that prediction.
So say that again. Some Canadian news network.
It's like talking about the halftime show. And it says.
So this might not be true? Or is it for real?
Very well might not be true.
Well, either way.
But it was a news story, apparently.
Correct.
I haven't vetted any
Was
of
it
this.
like Trudeau?
No,
News.com?
it's like Post Malone and so-and-so and so-and-so are going to be in the halftime show at the 49ers in Baltimore game.
yes.
So,
Yeah. Well, then you see all
do
these
you
other.
think that okay, so we're going to get psyoppy real quick here.
Okay.
Send it.
But what if their purpose is to mislead people
Well,
about the truth of it?
We've
And so,
thought about
you know,
that too.
Like they could
Who's
say
we?
that.
Is there something going on I don't know about?
My betting groups.
Oh, you're betting. Okay.
You know,
I don't care about that.
I started this group called the Broke Boys.
$5 bets and less.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's all right.
All right. Tell me about
you
these
still get the
Brokeback
thrill
Mountain
out?
boys.
You know, we all use the same app, so we're all in this group, and you can see what other people are betting. And if you like it, you can just click on their bet and be like, I want to bet that too, and you know, whatever. But yeah, we've talked amongst ourselves, and you're like, oh, did you see that Canadian thing? You know, we're all talking about it, and then you start looking, and there's all these videos of like,
What's that going to do with the spread for that?
does it matter? I don't know.
I don't understand it, but it would seem like that prediction has pretty much, for everybody that's betting, they're like, all right, 49ers are going to win. And so now are they going to pull the rug back out?
And there's definitely some naysayers within at least my group, like, oh, it's not rigged. Like, and there's side betting going on. Like,
Side betting on whether or not it's rigged.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I like that's the kind of thing I want to bet on. They should do that with
everything. Everything should have a bet.
Like
side bet on whether or not.
A couple nights ago, who played the 49ers?
Dude, you've been into sports for like 3 months. I don't know.
I don't know anything about sports.
It's like I don't even know you anymore.
Like I don't know all the rules and stuff, but you know.
The one day he's like, me and Cole are watching basketball. I'm like, why? Who are you? He's like, I bet on it.
I got that Skrilla riding on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
When there's money involved, I care, okay?
Well, I think all that aside, it's like you know, what we once thought wrestling was real also. Like when I was a kid, I'm like, man, they're beating the crap out of each other. And it's like,
well, that's true. You know?
And maybe they do a little bit, but
like does Vegas call and say, hey,
I thought political parties were real up until very, very recently.
They need to get a first down right now. And then it happens. Like, what the fuck? Like there's videos.
Follow the money.
There's videos of these people running balls, and then you know the defense is going to tackle him. Like, oh, he needs a first down, and then you see him. They just juke, and he just runs off the sidelines. Like, what the hell was that? He could have got 5,
I said
6
Joe
more yards.
Montana.
I don't get it.
Well, Jared's going to make fun of the sports ball, but I can understand the intrigue, I guess. But man, what do you think that if that comes out, or if it can come? Let's talk about the idea of whether or not that kind of idea can even come out at this point.
No.
Because think about all the things that are coming out.
No
one fully accepts them.
Football is way too coveted as a distraction technique. They even, when everything was shut down during COVID, they're like, do whatever you want. Just don't take away football. And they're like, fine, you got it back. There's no way that it's going to come out that it's all rigged. There's no way.
I just don't think like things can even, it's because of what we were talking about where it's like you have two versions of what's going on and one side will never accept the other side and everything gets broken down that way now.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that it is rigged, but it wouldn't be that hard if it was because 90% of it's probably just compartmentalized where it's only rigged at the top 10%, but all the players, all the athletes and everything, it's not rigged to them.
I like this
They're
idea.
They're out there playing their game, you know?
I like your idea about betting on whether or not something is rigged on the side. Like let's completely.
But how do you verify that? How do you verify that?
I don't know how you do, but like at least on the game that we were watching that night, it was the Packers and the 49ers.
You should just let it get bigger every week. $5 more in the pot. Every week it doesn't get decided, and then eventually that truth will come out, hopefully.
I don't know.
Same thing. We could do the same thing with politicians.
All I know is the Packers were leading the game up until like the last minute. Then I had to go on a squad run. But come back and 49ers won. It's like, what the crap happened? I don't know. But on the other side, there's a lot of people that are losing their livelihoods from their phones. Just betting on, because they won one time or something, or they had a couple hot streaks and they're just blowing the fuck out of their money. And I don't think they realize it. Like, there's got to be so many people that are just ruining their lives because sports betting is so easy now.
House always wins.
Always wins.
That's why Robinhood got so popular.
It's crazy.
The stock market. They turned it into a video game.
Yeah. I feel bad for some of these people that might not know exactly what they're doing,
I don't.
It's too easy.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's in many states now, right?
Yeah, some like Florida, it's not full-fledged allowed, I believe, yet. There's probably other states, but
I think Florida's good to go.
I don't know, because Almeida was talking to me about it the one day. Because they can do like
he was talking about fan picks or whatever it's called. Something
you mean OnlyFans?
I was gonna say that sounds like something else. But
Only picks.
Fan picks.
We're getting awfully close to something I don't want to say.
Sports betting?
That was what he was mad about before the show started.
Yes.
You think that that's going to last? The OnlyFans thing? Isn't there just like...
Dude, they made so... Let me just Google how much money...
Well, they were going to shut it down at one point. They were going to shut down nudity, and it's like, that's got to be 90% of your...
I swear they did that to get it in the headlines.
Probably.
They had to have.
I don't know.
It's a strange place we live in right now.
Well, let's hop off here and go smash one of Tim's computers.
Oh,
like Office Space.
Mm-hmm.
I'll smash anything electronic. You know what I've been pushing to do for a while. I don't know if that's going to start the war, but I think
you do that Iggy Shuffle cell phone thing, and it might go viral.
How do I post it though? Afterwards, you got to tape it.
We'll post
Yeah.
it.
Okay, I will do it.
I'll pull one of these cameras off the wall. Even
I got to go study up on my shuffle.
Yeah,
I want it to be spot on. I think he spikes it between his legs, which is even cooler.
Worth it.
Yeah.
Timmy, right. You got anything, buddy?
No, man.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Next time I come on, I'm spiking my phone. And I'm going to work on it.
It better be your active phone. You can't just find a phone.
I'm going to work on
I'm going to call you on it before you do it.
I haven't jumped in 20-some years, and I'm going to work on jumping up in the air so I can spike that shit between my legs. So
we might have to set up out on the veranda.
We'll go out on the veranda.
I'm going to need some room.
I know we got really excited for making this studio, but I'm looking forward to getting back out on the porch.
Outdoor podcasts are pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Birds chirping.
There's birds chirping.
Yeah. I used to get pissed off about editing it, but now I'm like, man, just the nice natural sunlight.
It's quaint.
Yeah. And maybe somebody won't be building a house next door, but anyway.
Yeah, it's built now. It's fine.
All right, guys. Well, if you have followed along with us this far, thank you. All 3 or 4 of you. We appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's somewhere over there.
Hit the bell.
Yeah. And if you do subscribe to us and you watch us and listen to us, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Jeff, thanks for coming on, buddy.
No problem.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Later.
Later.